Welcome to Draw Process, where I draw every page of my comic books and process about my development and the techniques I'm using in completing those pages. We're on page 49 of episode 2 of my comic, First Sun and Sword today. Let's begin. And this page was a struggle. I edited out some of the dead time when I just sat there staring at the page and thinking, because I wasn't sure what should happen next. Although I started with a solid script, I adjusted it several times along the way, and it's no longer a useful script. At this point, I'm making it up as I go with just some general bullet points of where we need to get to. When it comes page by page, I need to do what needs to happen. I mean, there's something about stories that kind of works that way. You know, if you listen to a folk tale, you kind of know what should happen next. If you know the general direction things need to go, what do we need to convey in the next several panels, in the next page? Sun and Feyre, with sword in the cart, are in disguise. They're disguised with grass capes, and she's got a hat on, and they've covered sword in the cart with straw so that he won't be seen as well. And they're going down a rundown alley with vagrants. And we already saw the start of this scene on the last page, the where they're at in the city, the alley. They're being pursued, going down the alley. This is the page where their pursuers might reveal themselves if I can get that far. So I need to show that happen. I could just have the pursuers just appear right now, but then there's no buildup. Just by feel, I know that's not right. Feyre, being the one at the driver's seat of things right now, she's here for a reason. She's trying to accomplish something. So let's put her goal in mind. Let's show the visual of where she's headed. There's a certain doorway she needs to get to in this alley that will lead to a drug salesman to give her the medicine for Sword's infection. So I need to show her seeing that spot, hesitating, gathering herself, preparing Sun, advancing towards that spot. And if I can get to it, show the gang come out from the shadows and surround her with crossbows. If I can get that far, it will go as slow as we have to go to make sure I hit those beats, though, and not skip anything. That's something I used to do with my shorter comics. It's very easy to skip beats to try to squeeze things in. But now that there's no time limit, there's no page limit on my personal comic here, I'll take as long as it takes to get where I need to go. So I just erased the first 4 panels because breaking it up in these small moments, I originally thought I would do that to try to show her, checking in front of her and then checking behind her to see if she's being pursued. And then maybe she would, go a little further up the road and look at the place she's trying to get to. I decided instead to show a nice establishing shot, a nice layout of where she's headed, her POV. And that where she's headed in itself as an image conveys the same information, the foreboding element, the caution that could there be people hiding in the shadows? Can I convey that with just the visual? And then move to these next 2 panels where Feyre looks to Sun, says something to him, and then they begin their walk. So I decided to go with a slight stair step in the alleyway. There's been kind of a stream of sewage kind of running down the middle of the alley, and it's going to run down these steps here. But by putting steps here, they're pushing a cart. This is going to be difficult to get the cart up the steps. So that in itself represents an obstacle to them. There's also doorways on either side and a large opening, I don't know what you'd call that, a garage in a sense, up ahead as well. And then the door she's trying to get to, it's up these very tiny steps to get up to the door. And she won't be able to take the cart with her to get in there, which is another obstacle, another, this is not looking so good. So I need to establish that in the shot. And that's just how I came up with how to do it. Try to make it look like a nice, clear image that's quiet, but with foreboding elements, with challenges, obstacles involved. Yeah. And then we'll see a lot of, in this shot, I felt that I needed to add more details into the architecture. A lot of times I'm going with these really simple things, flat walls that are plaster or something, with the boards, the posts that are supporting it, the doorway with the heavy trim. This time we're going to have the plaster cracking in spots with bricks showing, and this is just stuff I'm making up to try to add more to it. There's a spot that could hang a lantern. There's a foundation, stone foundation that's visible. Also, up ahead, there's none of the vagrant people are in the alleyway. So that also is a foreboding element. It's like, there's nobody up here. Why is that? And my initial, at first here, you'll see that I did consider putting people up there and just having that be a wall to the left of them. But I changed my mind, cleared that alleyway, and created an opening in the building, a large opening along there that's to where people could be hiding. Now, this is not precisely from her POV. It's at an angle that looks nice, but it is close and it represents her perspective on it. Okay. This panel is maybe a third of the page, pretty large. And you'll notice that I did not determine the exact size of this panel until I finished the drawing. Then I choose how much can I crop off of this to finalize it. I would rather do that than make my panel borders predetermined and then draw inside of them. Because I draw traditionally, I can't just move my drawing around until I find the best location. So it makes more sense to wait to draw that panel border most of the time. And what's new with me? Well, when I spent some time on the pin click art, where we draw in the style of Frank Frazetta, I was listening to classical music and I found that soothing and very not distracting. It was classical music for studying, just some kind of playlist. And I found that helpful in getting in the right headspace. Usually silence is good. Sometimes I do listen to music. It just depends on how I feel about how much I need to focus, or be, soothed or not. But yeah, that's something new I'm doing, is listening to classical music while I draw. Not every time. And continuing to not use the brush pen to fill in blacks, but just using the nib to add more hatching and thicker lines. Going back over it at times until I get the right balance. And that's just pushing me even further in the direction of using the pen and the quality of line, the hatching, to convey form and depth and the final image. I'm just going further and further into that camp. And yeah, I noticed when I draw this, this boy that has a larger head in proportion to his body, I tend to make his head larger than the adult heads. I think a lot of people do this. But that's something I'm trying to rein in, is just to capture his boyish, head shape. I don't just have to make it wider and bigger. So what's the right, proportion I should use? Trying to capture that. And as well as his height and stuff, there's such a height difference. How do I keep this, how he looks consistent? For me, I do not use a guide. I don't use drawings that are, this is my character. This is precisely how tall they are compared to this character. I'm drawing by feel, by relationship between parts, and not by measurements. So even when it comes to faces, like I've never been great at, let's say, the Loomis method for a head. I've never been great at memorizing these proportions and just drawing according to that. I will look at people and draw them, and I can do likenesses very well, but I'm just drawing what I see. I'm drawing by relationship between them, not by measurements on the grid underneath or something. And so with Sun, I can just tell if he's looking right or not. If he looks like the right age and build for what I imagine him to be after all these times I've drawn him. Yeah, I like that. That does take time and practice drawing the characters to get that down. There's 3 panels at the bottom here. First is Farah and Sun trying to lift the cart up over the stairs, and then we see the men behind them blocking their escape, and Farah kind of looking over her shoulder. Kind of a medium shot on her doing that. And then we go up above, showing as much of the alley as I can in this last panel, with men now in front and behind. The men have not been seen up close yet. I'll have to do that on the next page because I need to get a close-up, give you a feel for it. They're so small on the screen, it's not clear what their crossbows are like. It's not very clear. Just a few lines to indicate a crossbow doesn't tell you much. So we're going to get a close-up view. We'll see what are these weapons. They're a 2 or 3 shot, 2 or 3 arrows loaded at a time, kind of crossbows. So I thought that would be fun to throw in. I wanted them to feel very over-prepared with their trap for her. And it does look bad. So I leaned into that. It's like, I know that Karak the Man-Eater needs to get into conflict with them, needs to arrive and attack them. But I also need to deal with this gang and have the gang arrive too. And then it's just a matter of who arrives first and how does it go down. And I decided to go all in, make this look very, very much hopeless for our characters. They're very trapped. So how are they going to get out of this? And the interruption of Karak is probably how I'm going to create an opening for them to get away. You see, if they got a feeling they were being followed and they turned down a side path and just started running, and then they're being chased, like, that does not set us up as well. We need to get this moment when the gang arrives. It's a still moment and our characters really seem stuck. We're going to see Pompadour in his pompousness, standing there before them. We've got you now. Give me the boy, We need to have that moment before things take off again. And again, that's by feel. I just know that I need that moment. So kind of just getting out of the way of the story, letting it tell itself with the pieces I've put in play. when I'm drawing these shots, the vanishing point in this panel here is above her head. It's kind of above the halfway point. What I can do there is find, now she's a little low technically, but what I'm trying to do is find the height of the doorways and the other characters and make sure that there's some believability here, that it's close. So their height, if you follow the line from the vanishing point along the top of their heads up to where she is, then the idea is that it'll be pretty accurate. That she'll be the same height or slightly taller, since she is very tall. And the doorways here are pretty low anyways. I don't always draw them that way, but that's the idea. This is not a nice area, so they're not going to have nice, big, high ceilings and everything. That's something we might forget. In our world, you're going to have a standard height to doors and floors and ceilings, and that's not going to be the case in an unregulated old world like this. So yeah, you'll see how it's getting built out. That the beam, the framing on the outside of the wall is indicating where the ceiling, where the floor joists are for the second floor and the third floor. I'm basing that on the height of the character, the figure that I drew there. The figure coming out of the doorway, his height tells me kind of where the ceiling should be on that floor, where the next floor starts, and then the next one. And again, these are kind of small, kind of low ceilings here. This cart is being pushed uphill, up the stairs. If you were to follow the side edges of it, it is going to a much lower vanishing point than everything else because it's aiming upward. I do that by feel, but in the underdrawing, I did kind of draw that triangle. I did kind of draw it back to a vanishing point that was lower. When you have a narrow alleyway, it can be challenging to move the camera around realistically. Now, some people cheat this, especially in like animated cartoons, anime, and so on. You can just remove the wall and draw things from a distance, and maybe people just accept that. I try to move my camera in a realistic fashion. So you're limited. I can't move the camera on the side and show the men behind, the men in front, her in the middle, because the wall is right there. And if I were to do that, not only is it not realistic, but it removes the fact that she's enclosed on both sides. It kind of removes that information. It's a different story with that image. So this has been challenging to find those camera angles where I can capture, her going up the stairs here. And like here where there's men behind and in front. If I move the camera, too low, then the men will be standing behind her. Visually, they'll be behind her. You won't get the space as well. I wanted this shot where we can see at least the feet of the men behind her. That's all I could get in it. And her kind of center, the cart and Sun and her center, and then the men in front of her at the bottom. And I'm as close to the left wall of the alley, the left buildings. I'm as close as I can get, pretty much. So you can't see hardly any details in that building because we're so close to it. You're just getting a few lines to indicate that framing and the doors and windows. And this is, 2-point perspective, somewhat. Things are growing out from underneath them. And that allows me to have the camera overlapping with the floor. I want you to be able to see, where the bottom of the buildings meet the alleyway on both sides, But if I were to do that, then we would be inside of the wall. So there has to be a little bit of an angle on that wall so that we're not inside the wall when we see it. I hope that makes sense when I just say it with words and not like drawing it. But that's one of the reasons that each time the camera's above, I'm doing 2-point perspective, just slightly. And now I have finished pencils, Micron 08 for the word balloon and the panel borders. And then I come in with my G pen. The nib is called a G. And I just randomly picked that one. I mean, there's a lot of options I've heard are good for comics, and that's a very popular one. So I just picked that. It seems pretty versatile. But there's other ones that I like the sound of, and I'm sure I would have fun with. It would change the quality of my art, how I approach this. Because as I've learned with this, my style has been informed by the tools that I use. If you want to try to grow and change your style, start using some new tools and see what happens. I think sometimes people are using the wrong tools for their what seems more true to their type. It's hard to explain that, but the tools do change how you draw. And if you're using tools that don't match well with your drawing style, your production style, then it can limit you. I don't know how to explain that, but I think I've seen it in people. And I think it's true for me. This style of inking is letting me draw much more freely. And the way that I draw is being shown in the inks more so than it used to when I did the cleaner, simpler lines. And that seems like a win. It's looks more like me. And I just messed up the stream here. You'll notice that I drew the stream first and then the stairs, and I was like, oh, there's one more step that it needs to cascade down. So I'll fix that with whiteout. It's not a big deal, mostly with whiteout, and I can do it digitally too. And you'll notice that these walls are not perfectly straight because I am freehanding this, and I don't mind, especially when it's like an alley like this. The buildings are not level, so it's not a big deal. If I'd taken a ruler and made perfectly straight lines, then there's a cost to that, because the way that I draw my figures, the way that I'm drawing like these stone steps and everything, it's very organic and loose. So it's not going to match to have these really tight walls and then these loose other elements. So it's better to, go all in. And you'll see here where I wasn't sure how much black to put in this corner, so I keep adding more and more until I basically fill it all the way in. That's the nice, playful building in that I can do with this tool that I could not do with the Micron and heavy black brush filled in heavy black areas. I've continued to get up at the same time every day, go to bed at just about the same time, and it has improved my energy a lot. I'm continuing to stay on the straight, disciplined path in life, and I have had more energy and more time to do art, and I'm focused on solving the actual problems in my life directly and not avoiding them. And it can be a kind of a bummer at first, but it's worth it in the long run. And so I feel my work is even conveying that. There's a little more, I'm getting more of it done for one, but it's less laid back in a way. Like, not that I want to be like too stressed and serious about what I do, but there's more of a focus in my mind, and I think it's visible in the work. It's hard to put words to that, but it's something I feel. And I'm also just getting more and more comfortable using this tool and inking in this fashion. So, and more confident with these complex environments with lots of figures in it. So I'm ready to just roll with it and get through the last, arc of this story, the final stuff. Lots more fighting and environments to do, but yeah, I'm ready to do it and continue with this style and just let it shine as much as it can. Let it be what it is. Hopefully by the end of this comic, I won't be changing so much. I mean, change is good, though. I mean, why would I say I don't want to change? I should get better, but I just hope to improve a lot by the end of this issue, which might have another 30 pages, and that way the next one just starts off really strong. I still need to draw a cover for this book. I'm looking forward to that with the new style I'm using. And over the next 3 months, I've got to do a lot of illustrations, 4 maybe 5 of them. And I'm going to get to experiment with those, just like I did with the Frazetta piece, where I used some watercolor and ink wash and a kind of different style of illustration. I'm going to be experimenting over the next several months with some things like that for an art book with Clever Kaiju, and I'm looking forward to that. It's going to be good to grow in these ways, and I do wonder, how would I like to do my illustrations, especially now that my style has changed. Like, if I were to do a commission, then how would I like to execute it? And at conventions, it would be helpful to be able to sell more art than I currently do. And what kind of art would people like to have on their walls? What would speak to them that they would want to own it? Now, if you draw in a very comic book style, then that's the kind of person that's going to buy your art for their wall. They're typically just going to be a fan of that. But I notice there's a lot of people at conventions that like art, but not that kind of art. So what kind of thing would they like on their wall? And is there a way that I can move more into that kind of space with my art in a way that captures some of the new skills I'm developing, is purely my own, but is commercial in a sense, is marketable, sellable, would not hurt, and I would grow along the way, but it would not hurt to bring in enough money to pay for the trip. That is hard to do these days. The economy's not great. Convention prices go up, like for the guests, for people to come to the con, their ticket price is higher, leaving less money to spend. There's lots of reasons that sales have been down across the board for most creators, most artists. It's not a hard and fast rule. I know there's people that have been successful. Some come to mind who have focused on finding a way to make art that people want on their wall, that people like, that is not comic book oriented. And then they tell people, hey, there's a comic book with this character in it, with this relates to one of my comics. And then sometimes they'll buy the comic to go with the art. Different strategies than the traditional just be a comic artist and sell it to people that want comic art. So thinking about that, and we'll see what comes of it as I produce some of these illustrations. It might help me find what path works. Of course, at my heart, I'm going to be focused on making the comics. The illustrations can be fun sometimes, and maybe that's the ticket. I mean, maybe when I do illustrations, I just have fun with it and I experiment with something new every time. And that's what I might get out of it. That might be why I enjoy doing it. And, focus more on the comic art as the place where I am consistent and grow in one direction. And, that'd be one option. And I guess I'm getting myself prepared for 2025. Try to get positioned in the right way to succeed. You'll notice that the bricks on the ground are the way that I'm filling those in is intentional. It's not completely filled in such a way that it's a pattern that just flattens everything. There's groupings of detail. There's more detail the closer it gets to the camera, but not simply that, closer to where the focus is. And then it dissipates as it gets further down the page. Even though it's technically closer to the camera, it doesn't simply have more detail for that reason, or more texture for that reason. I'm adding blacks to finalize each panel. Where can I thicken some things, create more contrast? One last pass over it the way I used to do with the brush pen. And you'll see that it does kind of add some weight and make things pop a little more when I do that. And then, of course, when I color, I add a shadow layer or two and a lighting layer, a highlight layer. And that will help things contrast even more. Not a lot of thoughts lately. I think I've been really getting on one track mind. And sometimes on these videos, I know that I have a lot of thoughts to share. And lately I've been too disciplined, too much the farmer doing the work to have much to say about these bigger ideas. So I always hope there's a good balance between technique and personal journey and professional journey that can help others with theirs. And then, of course, the mindset stuff that I try to sprinkle in at times, too. But I'm enjoying this. Definitely going to keep doing one of these per week and finish this book. And I hope you got something out of this. Be the practice of your art and encourage others to do the same. I'll see you next week.